Welcome back to another NCAT movie review. Today we have The Boy and the Heron, a movie that has an introspective look on life and death through a child's eyes and imagination. Is this movie as good as fans say? Let's jump into the review. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The plot of this film is based following World War II in Japan. It follows a young boy called Mahito as he deals with the death of his mother in a fire in a hospital. Following the death of his mother, his father moves to the countryside with Mahito and marries his auntie. And Mahito struggles to deal with the fact that his auntie looks exactly like his mother, obviously because they're sisters, and the struggles that come with that, and also him having a baby brother being born. Once Mahito gets to the countryside in his new house, he is met with these 7 weird-looking maids who resemble the 7 dwarves from Snow White. I'm not sure if that was the connection or not, but they have these crazy-looking designs on them. And they tell of a story about a secret tower that landed on the property from space, and that their great-uncle went mad and went missing, and that certain people go missing in this tower. Mahito's auntie then goes missing in this tower, and Mahito goes on a crazy journey to look for her and bring her back to his father so that she doesn't get lost. And this is where the Heron comes in. The Heron leads Mahito through this crazy parallel universe that he goes through. And this universe is either, depending on how you view the film and how you look at it, this universe that he goes into could be his imagination or it could be real. It depends on how you look at it. And it's a different look of Mahito dealing with the grief of losing his mother, the grief of not wanting to lose another mother, being his auntie, and also dealing with not fitting in his new environment, in his new school, because he's pretty much not over the fact that his mum died in a fire and he feels like it's his fault and he's haunted by the memory of his mother. And it's just a very interesting movie that deals with all different aspects of family, of grief, of one's responsibility to family, of also the dilemma of wanting to live in a perfect world if you yourself aren't perfect because of things that you've done. And if you were given the opportunity to live in the perfect world and essentially be a god in the perfect world, would you, knowing that you yourself aren't perfect but you're working on it and that you're working to become better, and that you realize that in this world, even though you're not perfect, you can still have friends and family and still make a life for yourself? And that's one of the many interesting, intricate views and points and theories that this film makes you think about as you, not only as you watch it, but afterwards when you leave the cinema and you think to yourself, in a little bit of a way sometimes, what the hell did I just watch? But I want to know more about it, and I want to learn more about what I've just seen, and I want to see the intricacies that the director Miyazaki was going for, who is obviously, everyone knows, retired, but the creator and founder of Studio Ghibli, which has made many good movies, just like The Boy and the Heron, that quite honestly, me and Josh haven't seen any of these movies, but after seeing The Boy and the Heron, I really want to see them, and I'm going to go and see all of them, because if they're anything like The Boy and the Heron, then I'm in for a great ride.
The journey that Mahito goes on, it can be very confusing if you're a first-time viewer or if you're unfamiliar with the director's work, but it seems to be also comparative to Miyazaki's life, and essentially he's the main character.
You can definitely tell Miyazaki from this film is a man that's in the later stages of his life, where we know, like, in the real world, he's retiring from Ghibli Studios, which he pretty much created and built from the ground up, and you can sort of see aspects of that in this film where he's struggling to come to terms with that. I think he's struggling to come to terms with the fact that maybe the studio's not going in the direction that he wanted it to, and that maybe, I think I read somewhere that his family or his son doesn't really want to go on with what he created at Ghibli, and he's sort of coming to terms with that. So you can definitely tell those themes and aspects are in this movie.
And it also seems like that he kind of wishes that he could have been or achieved what he put into this film as well in himself. And because Miyazaki is 83 now, you could probably say that he's looking back on his life and thinking what he could have done better, and he's writing himself as Mahito and probably wishing what he could have done and made better decisions. And from what we've researched, he always seems to put himself or a version of his life problems into this film, which gives us a connection to the story and him a connection to the audience, and in particular his mother and how big of an impact that she had in his life. I noticed that during a scene where he rocks up into the front of these gates, which could be considered the gates of hell, which is a clear reference to Dante's Inferno, just with the insignia or the scripture that was written on the gates, which says, "Those who seek the creator of knowledge shall die." But this movie did a little different. It was more, "Those who seek what I know shall die." So it actually left it open to interpretation for a little bit. I think that was deliberately done just so everyone can understand what's going on, no matter what you believe in. And Miyazaki is very good at doing this, considering his work is so founded into his own beliefs that he also needs to encompass others. So that was a very good tell by him. I also think this movie just has like a ton of layers. When you sit there and just stew on what you were thinking about halfway through the film. It was like, is this referencing this? This has to be referencing something. And the amount of layers that it had, referencing to all types of philosophy or questions of moral judgment, which is some of probably the hardest questions to even answer. It just took you in a completely different direction for this film. It took me like really off guard with how many twists and turns it had, and it left me I think overall confused, but still I was quite satisfied with the outcome from it. And the movie kind of allowed you to just stew and sit into all of these moral judgment questions or even philosophical questions.
One of the reasons I think that Josh was saying it was sort of confusing from a viewer who maybe isn't so familiar with Miyazaki's directional style or the way he makes films is the animations of the actual movie itself were very confusing in some parts. Like, it would just go from one universe to another universe with no real explanation. But I think that just comes back to the fact that this was all in Mahito's mind, or the tower could have been real, but it was also just a fantastical version of Mahito's world. And I think he goes for that directional style and maybe that animation concept because it sort of builds up this whole mysticism around this universe that he's got in The Boy and the Heron, which is just, it feels like a crazy picture story book that you would read as a child where your imagination just runs wild with all these different talking creatures and animals and cool people with superpowers and pretty much what you would, as a child, how your imagination would run wild with just the most random thoughts that made sense to you because I guess you're a kid.
And just a reference to what Geordie's saying about it might be in Mahito's head. There's a scene specifically where he goes into the tower and he's picking up these feathers. Now as soon as he turns out of the tower and gets called back, the feathers are now gone. So it does give clear indication that this actually could be all made up and you don't really know what is happening, which I think that's why I was so confused with what direction it was going. And I was thinking, was it going to be pure imagination or was it going to be some type of realism embedded into the animation, which I guess in a way it was, but that was just my confusion. But once you get to know the director and you kind of do a bit of research on it, you do understand.
And that also doesn't hinder the movie whatsoever. If you're a little bit confused while you're watching it, you're still locked into the journey that Mahito's going on and you still want to see the ending. Is he able to save and recover Natsuko? Like, is he able to get back to his dad? Is he able to come to terms with everything like that? So even if you're a little bit confused watching this movie and say you're a first time viewer of this guy's pieces and work, the movie still flows perfectly. You still sit there in wonder and amazement watching it.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Geordie was saying about the animation, it was actually remarkable. I know that there was 60 animators riding on this, I think over 3 years, and they only had 36 minutes of film. That's just how much effort and time that they put into this film. And this is the type of effort that we keep reiterating that needs to be put back into cinema. Japanese cinema is doing it perfectly. And for the two that we've watched, it's been 100% hit rate so far.
Now, me and Josh watched the English dubbed version of this movie. We know we probably should have watched the movie in the Japanese with the English subtitles, but you can't turn away from how good this cast was. I mean, as soon as I saw Robert Pattinson, as the Heron actor, and I saw in the trailer the voice that he put on for that, exactly are you? I was like, I have to watch this right now because it sounds nothing like him and it's completely left field for what he does. Now, in a lot of films where you see Robert Pattinson acting, he's very mellow. He's very just nonplus. I mean, all you have to go back to is his breakout role, which is Cedric Diggory or Edward Cullen, to see that his acting style when he was in the beginning of his career was very nonchalant. But in this film, as the Grey Heron, I mean, his acting was incredible, especially when he's, screaming or when he says, like, your presence is requested. It's just incredible to hear that you couldn't even tell that was Robert Pattinson. And it's so sort of left field for him. The resurgence of his career has just been incredible when you look at what he's been able to do in the last couple of years. But not just Robert Pattinson in this movie. I mean, Christian Bale as Mahito's dad. Up until about 3/4 of the way into the film, you cannot tell that it's Christian Bale. But then there's a certain scene where he yells out and it's just completely in Christian Bale's English accent. So he did a really good job. Mark Hamill, I mean, you know what you're getting with Mark Hamill. The man is an absolute voice acting genius. He is the greatest voice actor of all time. He sounded great in this. Willem Dafoe as the Pelican. He wasn't in it for too long, but when he was in it, I mean, you know that voice from anywhere. It's so characteristic of his. Great voice acting. Florence Pugh, I could not tell that it was Florence Pugh at all until I read the credits afterwards that she was in this film. I had no idea it was her, and I didn't even know she had voice acting in her arsenal, so just another talent of hers that she's obviously got. Batista, I mean, how can Dave Batista voice act? I mean, his voice is just so... It's one tone, it's Batista, that's all it is. But he did really good. He wasn't in it for too long, but when he comes in, he makes an immediate impact, and his voice was really, really funny in this. And I mean, you know it's him straight away. And the character he plays, of course, it's a giant king in this. I mean, what else could Dave Bautista play as? But the voice acting in this film really deserves a lot of praise. That's what drew us to this film. I will admit, when I saw Robert Pattinson and Christian Bale, those names, I thought, well, if they're doing this, let's see what all the fuss is about. But now that I look back at the other cast of some of the other movies that Ghibli's done English cast, you know, I've seen John Krasinski's in one, I've seen Emily Blunt's in one, so that's another reason why I'm sort of thinking, well, okay, let's go back and watch all these films and see what I've been missing out on all these films.
And just a few noteworthy things to mention in this film was also the humor that it brought as well. You kind of weren't expecting that. And just as simple times, it made you laugh. I think it was easy for that way for you to digest what was going on instead of always thinking so heavily about what's happening to the film and the storyline. So that was also a good take by Miyazaki to change up that pace.
Another noteworthy thing worth mentioning was the soundtrack and also the theme of this movie. It was really amazing. I mean, it was quite simple at the beginning of the film. The first few times you see the heron pop up, it's just a simple piano key or a simple few piano keys, which really sets the tone and also the mysteriousness behind the heron. Because, I mean, the whole film, you're not quite sure, is he a good guy, is he a bad guy, is he on Mahito's side, is he not? And the theme, every time a really pivotal scene would come on, the theme when Mahito would be doing something that was very dangerous or very heroic or very adventurous, when it would come on and set the tone, it almost gave you goosebumps half the time about how beautiful it was and how treacherous it was in its ability to set the tone for what was about to happen or what was about to transpire in the movie. So the theme and the soundtrack deserves a huge shout out. And if they didn't win any awards for it, they really should have.
Yeah, and I think just to finish, the rating for this review, for me, just for animation and for what it was, has to be like high 90s. It'd be 95, 97%. Like, there's nothing wrong with this film. There's nothing apart from a bit of a confusion, but everything else was just, I think, indicative to the nature of what Miyazaki was trying to say and trying to produce from his real life and onto screen in the film. It was something like literally to behold, this film. If you read into the research, sort of know his background, and because all of his work is based around himself and his life story and what he's been through in his traumatic experiences, and that's what I think is why we connect with this film so much, just because it's actually relating to the audience of real things, not these falsehoods that Hollywood keeps throwing out. So it's a very nice change of pace, and I am really enjoying these Japanese films. I can't wait to go see more.
Yeah, my rating would be the same. I'd give it 100%. I think there's nothing wrong with this film. The animation is perfect. Like, everything that Josh said, I agree with. And it's a heavy film, but there's moments of joy in it. There's moments of sadness. There's moments that are uplifting. There's moments that are like crushing, but it just all works. Beautiful soundtrack, like we've said. Everything about this movie was great, and I would recommend to anyone and everyone to see this movie. Give it a chance. You might be a little bit confused, but it's well worth the ride. So
anyway, guys, this has been another N-Cut movie review. Don't forget to drop the like, the sub, and if you really enjoyed, share it up, baby. Let us know what you thought as well.
Join the hive mind.
Exactly. Oh yeah, we're doing a hive mind too.
Join the hive mind and the cult.
Anyway, guys, peace. We gone.
Peace.
And cut.
We gone, he reckons.